Welcome and thank you for attending today's webinar, Navigating the Federal Hiring Process. If you are overwhelmed by the federal hiring process, then you are definitely in the right place. Our expert presenter will shed some light on the process by identifying where to look for vacancies, what to include in your application materials, what to look for on the vacancy notice, as well as tips and strategies for answering the occupational questionnaire, writing your cover letter, and building your professional network in the federal sector. But before we introduce officially our expert presenter today, we would like to get some feedback from our audience. We kind of want to know who is in the audience and who is joining us today. So we're going to launch a brief poll here. What degree are you currently pursuing? Are you a bachelor's student, master's, doctoral, alum, or other? Great. It looks like the majority of our students are at the master's and doctoral level. So our presenter, Bill Brantley, will be hopefully addressing a lot of your key questions today. Okay, so we're going to close the poll up. It looks like almost 50-50, 50% doctoral and 47% master's students, and a few bachelors. Exciting to see also prospective and alums on the line as well. So let's take a second to look at those results. And get on with the introduction of our presenter. So we are very honored to introduce our presenter for today's webinar, Dr. William Brantley, Walden University alumnus, who received his doctorate in public policy and administration from Walden. He currently works as a human resources specialist at the Office of Personnel Management in Washington, D.C., and also is an instructor at the University of Louisville and the University of Maryland. Hello, Bill, and welcome.
Well, thank you, Nicole, and I'd like to welcome everyone else that came online. Thank you for attending today's webinar.
Today, Bill will be discussing the latest trends in the federal hiring process, how to tailor your application materials to put your strongest foot forward, and strategies for building your professional network in the federal sector. So with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to our presenter, Bill, and we'll get started.
Okay, great. Thank you again. Now, before I get into this, I have to do this to make the attorneys at OPM happy. A little disclaimer here. I'm not speaking officially for the Office of Personnel Management nor the federal government. I'm speaking just personally as a citizen, as a Walden alumnus, and someone who has used these techniques and have helped others use these techniques to get them federal job interviews and such. So these have been tested. This is how I got my job currently. So, you know, there's that kind of guarantee, what is it, good housekeeping guarantee. And one thing I do want to point out is that the federal government is still hiring. I know you hear in the news that government employees, there's, you know, pay freezes and all this, and it looks like they're wanting to cut back the size of government. But there's still thousands of jobs out there in the federal government, and some of these techniques can also be used for state and local governments also. And some of the reasons why we're still having these jobs out there is there's going to be a retirement wave coming on. I mean, a lot of baby boomers are getting ready to retire, move on ahead. And we have lots of positions right now that need specialists. And when I talk about a wide range of jobs, pretty much anything you're interested in doing, the federal government hires for. Biggest thing right now is cybersecurity specialists, but if you're a forensic anthropologist, they're looking for that. Department of Education is looking for educational specialists, so I know Walden educational master's and doctorate students want to look there. So there's a wide range of jobs out there. And you don't have to just work in D.C. Their stations are, job duty stations, as we call them, all over the United States and abroad. So you don't have to just come all the way over here to D.C. You can still pretty much stay in your hometown or move to one of the bigger cities, maybe San Diego, San Francisco, Kansas City, and work there. And one other thing I want to kind of point out is that when you're doing the job search, don't think of the federal government as just one big monolith with one big culture. There are a lot of agencies and departments, small agencies, big agencies. They all have their own little cultures. Even individual offices have the culture. So there's certainly a fit for someone in there. So if you're kind of a more collegial type, you might enjoy the National Science Foundation. If you kind of like to come to work every day wearing a suit, SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, or FBI might be perfect for you. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide and get a quick overview of the federal hiring process. Now, it can seem kind of daunting, so I've kind of boiled this down for you. And throughout this, we're going to talk about the different stages. But essentially what happens in the federal hiring process is a vacancy is announced, usually on USA Jobs, on the agency website, in the newspaper, all kinds of different places. You will read that vacancy. You'll learn how to analyze that vacancy. You'll submit your application. Usually it's two key pieces, a resume and an occupational questionnaire. You may have some optional documents, and we'll talk about those in a moment. And then your documents go in. It goes through a rating process. There's a basic qualification screening where HR specialists look at to make sure that you met all the requirements for the job. And then it's sent to a panel to review and rate. And I've been on a couple of these panels, and what we basically do is we're subject matter experts. Recently I sat on the panel looking at paralegal positions and looked at people that had a paralegal background and kind of rated them on, how well would they fit with the job on the specialized duties. And then we give a certification for it. And if the certified, the application is sent to the hiring manager, and if you're selected, there's an interview and hopefully a job offer. So that's kind of the process in the case here. And I think one of the biggest things that people need to get used to with the federal hiring process is that some time can pass. It's gotten a lot better, but sometimes you feel like you put your application out there, you haven't heard anything for a couple of months or so, and just as normal. I always tell folks to just, keep persevering, keep looking at USA Jobs. There are 4 major points where you're supposed to get an email from USA Jobs telling you when it's been looked at, when it's been uploaded, and just keep trying out there because, like with this job here, one day out of the blue, I did get a phone call for an interview. A month later, got out of the blue again, the offer to come work for OPM. So go ahead and go to the next slide. Okay. Now, talked about vacancies. This is the start of the process, and where do we find these vacancies? Of course, on USA Jobs, and it's the premier federal website for job hunting, if you're looking for federal jobs. And one thing is, don't rely on this solely. We're going to talk about some other places, but this is a good start, and you should have at least one resume online. Make sure it's searchable. You can have kind of a generic resume if you want to put it on there. And that way, if hiring managers are looking for someone with your specific skills, and we'll talk about keywords and how important they are in a moment, they can use this to search through your resume. You can also build search agents that automatically email you if you want on a daily basis, and you can have up to 10 of these that look at certain job classifications, certain agencies, certain locations, whatever you want to work, wherever you want to work at, and whichever agency you want to work at. Now, I know a lot of Walden students are veterans, and there is a big push in the federal government right now for veterans. And there's a great website. If you're a veteran, I would suggest you bookmark this site, fedshirevets.gov, because not only does it contain job listings, there are also notices of job fairs, special workshops, all kinds of resources to help veterans make the transition from military life to civilian life and finding a federal job. And these job fairs, if you can make them, are great. I have volunteered at one in D.C. It was a very large event. 500 to 700 veterans down in the Washington Convention Center. And basically you have these booths where all the agencies were right there, and veterans could go, and in some cases, some of these agencies had authority to hire on the spot. I worked one where we had the USA Job site online and helped veterans set up a resume, help them register. Next to us was a VA, Veterans Administration, coaching area where basically a veteran can sit down with an expert and they would be coached one-on-one. Look at your resume, look at your qualifications, help you find the kind of job that you may have done in the military that you could transfer over to the federal. All of these, also, look at the different individual agency websites. most agencies, and pretty much all of them actually, have to put their positions on USA Jobs, but sometimes, like the National Science Foundation, they don't have to. So you may have some of the jobs listed on USA Jobs, but a lot more jobs listed on the agency website. It's just a good way to cover yourself. So if you're interested in like a commerce job or an education job, make sure to bookmark the website and look for their specific HR openings. And also get to know the agency HR office. If you really want to work for education or, let's say, Department of Defense, get to know the folks down there, call them up, talk to them. They can sometimes alert you to fellowships or job fairs that may be available for like graduates in master's or doctoral programs. News.google.com, it's not an official website, but essentially what I like to do with that is set up news alerts on the agencies so that I can find out about expansions or when they're hiring or any kind of events that are happening that can give me an indication. Maybe I need to put a resume into this, to this agency. National Academy of Sciences. A lot of Walden students are interested in kind of continuing on with their education and continuing on with the scholarly practitioner stuff that we do. So National Academy of Sciences has some great job openings for that. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. And we have the Defense Department has a civilian employment program, so just don't think if you're not in the military that you can't work for the Defense Department, because it has a really robust civilian employment program, almost run, kind of parallel with what OPM has. Roll call, the Hill, Washington Post, the major newspapers. Find their websites, bookmark those, take a look through their ads. Sometimes you may not find a direct federal job, but you might find a contractor job that may get you into the agency that you want to work for. And I bring this up here, the 55 years and older Senior Environmental Employment Program. This is something that the EPA runs. And this is for folks that are retired or looking at retirement but may still want to work. And you have this program, which is pretty interesting, kind of a concept there. I haven't seen any other programs like it in other agencies, but if you're interested in the environment and you still want to kind of contribute, you might want to look at that. The Plum Book, if you have some executive experience or some high-level, management experience, you might want to take a look at this. These are political appointees. These are folks like deputy directors and office chiefs and such that you're politically appointed, so you're not going to be a permanent federal employee, but, it can be a pretty exciting job to be maybe the deputy secretary of the Department of Commerce. Again, one of the things to do is make sure you bookmark USA Jobs in the agencies you're looking for. Check them daily. There is a 5-day minimum for job openings, so sometimes jobs will pop up, and you may have, those 5 days, and it goes away. So always keep checking. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. And this is so true. Preparation is key. There's a lot of work involved in building the resume and answering the occupational questionnaire. And I also tell you to keep a job book so you can kind of keep a track of what you're doing here, because it's really important that you get all your ducks in a row, as they say, when you're applying for a job. Because if you're missing part of an application or something that is, that they need to evaluate, your resume will just be kicked out. Your application will be kicked out, and you'll never get a warning about that. So just kind of the harsh truth there, but let you know. So I see we got a poll coming up.
Yeah, with that, we're going to find out where everyone is in the process. So I'm going to launch another poll here for our audience. So we're kind of trying to gauge an interest from our audience in this webinar today. So where are you in the process? Are you currently in the federal government and seeking out other opportunities? Are you outside of the federal government and currently applying to get in? Or are you really just here joining into today's webinar to gain some new strategies to start applying? So we'll wait a few seconds to give our audience. Interesting. It's almost looking about 60-40, 70-30, meaning most of our audience attending today, they're here to gain new strategies, and about 40% are outside federal government looking to. So let's share our results here.
Okay.
So 67-39. Most people are looking for a new strategy, so Bill's going to continue talking about that, and about 40% outside and looking to apply. So thank you very much. And we'll go ahead and get started on the preparation process.
Okay. Well, great. I mean, That's good to know, because I want to make sure I don't give you information you already know about. But hopefully some of these tips will help you. Some of these are kind of common sense in one way, but I like to be able to kind of pull it all together for you because, again, you want to be organized when you do this. And one of the best ways to organize yourself is to build this master resume. Now, this is not what you're going to use to apply for jobs because it's going to be too general, too generic. It's more for your help in helping you build the targeted resume that you want to send to the job. And it also helps because a lot of these jobs may require security clearance, and this is stuff that if you have it already in the file, it helps you a great deal in filling out that security questionnaire. So, like one when I did Social Security Administration, I had to list all my addresses from 10 years back, and then I had to list an address of a neighbor that lived next to me that could verify I lived there. It was a top secret clearance. So that's something you can't really dredge out of your mind on the spot. So this is why I found the master resume very helpful. Now, when you're dealing with the federal job right now and the way resumes are right now, they're going more towards a push of kind of resumes you're looking for in the private sector. But there are still some required pieces of information that you have to have. For all your jobs, you have to have the title of the job, the actual name of the company, as exact as you can get it, supervisor's name and number, the address, the salary that or in the last salary that you received, start and stop dates for this job, the number of hours, full-time, part-time, and duties. And when we talk about duties, we'll talk a little bit later about keywords. So you may want to go back, but list the general duties that you had, and when we go back to the keywords, you may want to kind of expand upon that. So that's go ahead and go to the next slide. That's the good stuff that you need to have there. On education, this is where it's really helpful to go ahead and get all your transcripts. Now, I know in some jobs you may be required to send a transcript on loan, and it's one of these where you don't open it, you have it sent directly. But go ahead and get all your transcripts for yourself and have those on file, because you're going to have to name, the school that you went to, the address of the school, start and end dates, credit hours earned, the major and the degree, and make sure that you have this, in hand, because when I first started out in the state government in Kentucky, I had a double major. I was a speech communication major and a paralegal science person, and when they looked at my resume, my transcript, I was in a paralegal position, but all they could see was speech communication. So I was almost kicked out of that job after the first 10 days on the job because they didn't think I had a degree, and I had to go back and get the transcript and show them, yes, I do have the paralegal science part also. So, just sometimes things like that happen. It's good if you have your records to back yourself up. All your honors and awards, no sense in being bashful here, so just list everything, and all the professional and academic activities. Some people don't think that the things they do for nonprofits or their church or whatever matters, but in some cases you get some valuable skills. Maybe you put on a church seminar or conference or whatever, and these are valuable skills that can translate to something you can do in the federal workforce. So when we talk about the keywords, don't worry, about whether I got paid for this or not. In some cases, they'll actually say any, professional or volunteer activities will count. Just think about keywords, transferable skills that you have and that you learn from this. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide. Again, all addresses current and previous. And if you are like me, kind of getting up there in the age bracket there, you may have forgotten where you were living when you were 21 or 25, and that may have to pop up on the security clearance. Credit history, they will check your credit history, especially if you're going for a security clearance. So just kind of guard yourself and make sure you're not surprised. You might want to get a copy of your credit history. Achievement stories. Now, when they used to have the KSAs, or knowledge, skills, and abilities, that was the long essays that you used to have to write. They've gotten rid of those, but you'll have this occupational questionnaire. In some cases, you may have to write something short, maybe a couple paragraphs or so. So it's still a good idea to have an achievement story that showcases a particular knowledge, skill, or ability that you're very good at. And you can use this format, problem, actions, challenges, results, and feedback, to structure it. So you may still end up having to write something, not a long essay, but maybe a short essay, no more than half a page at the most is what I've seen. But just be prepared for that. And it's a lot easier if you can cut and paste it from a Word document into the USA Jobs Resume Builder than if you try to think of it on the spot. So go ahead and go to the next slide. So we got a master resume put together, and the next part of the phase here is we're going to look at applying or analyzing a vacancy to see how well you match up to that vacancy. So the good thing about the master resume is you've done a thorough examination of yourself, of the skills you have, of how you what kind of knowledge, skills, and abilities you can give to an employer. And now we're going to take a look at the vacancy and see how that pops up. And there it is right now. This is pretty much a current one. This is what you see on USA Jobs. Now, some agencies have different job systems, but the vacancy announcements look very similar. And there's some key things to look here for. So underneath the title, Office of Innovation and Improvement, 4 key pieces here. The job title plus the series number, and this is a GS, so it's General Schedule. 0343, that's the job series. And if you go on OPM's website and type that in, that'll tell you what kind of duties and knowledge, skill, and abilities you need to know for that job series. 14 is the grade, and that tells you basically how much you get paid for. Department of Education, agency, good stuff to know. But here's something very vital. See the job announcement number? When you're corresponding with that agency, especially with their HR office, that's a vital number to have. Make sure that you keep that with you and record that in your job log. And I have, on occasion, when I first applied for some jobs, didn't note that, thought the vacancy would be there when I came back on USA Jobs, and it had disappeared, and I had no clue what the job number was. So when I went to one interview, I actually forgotten what the duties and the what they were looking for, and kind of had to wing it. So I was successful, but it's not a good feeling to have when you have to tap dance like that. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. And this is where we're going to start looking at the duties. And what we're looking for specifically is keywords. And keywords, basically are mostly nouns. Sometimes they can be adjectives, adverbs. But what you're looking here is what are they looking for? And then matching your experience and education to that and echoing the keywords in the resume. And the reason why you want to do this is because when the HR person is sitting there rating your resume and your supporting documents, and when the panel is rating it, they're essentially looking for someone that does fulfill it. So let's take a look at number 2 here. Supervise and manage staff while assisting them in achieving their professional objectives. So they're going to be looking for the keywords of, have you supervised anyone? Have you managed staff? How big of a staff? Did you help them or assist them or help them in achieving their professional objectives? What does that mean? Training your staff, developing your staff, moving them on to higher, positions, stuff like that. So you want to basically analyze that and find the keywords. And here I would say supervise, manage, achieving professional objectives. Those would be some of the keywords. And look on your resume, your master resume, for instances that you did this and that you can show that you've done this. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide. And we're going to keep looking more into that because part of the duties here are something called specialized experience. These are the must-have. This is basically how they are, if you don't have these skills, essentially the agency's not going to look at you anymore. So you have to have the specialized experience. And take a look at the second paragraph. Examples of such experience may include identifying procedural problems in program operations using qualitative or quantitative methods. There's a Plain Language Act that was passed last year, and the job descriptions are supposed to be written in Plain Language Act. Some are being converted over. You still get some of what we call the federalese, the procedural problems in program operations. What exactly does that mean? In some cases, you may have to take that apart, look on the dictionary, look at some of the OPM documentation. But once you figure out what that is, and from looking at it here, when I analyzed it, is, could that mean Six Sigma? Could that mean some things where I worked in a nonprofit where we were handling, homeless people, or we were handling maybe handing out food to folks, and we had some different program operations. There were some process problems we had, and because I was able to use my dissertation or my master's thesis, and which had qualitative or quantitative methods when I was doing this, I was able to improve operations. That could be a valid thing to put in there and say, yes, I have identified procedural problems in a program, and I identified them by using these qualitative and quantitative methods, and it was able to improve the program. You see how that kind of works there? Sometimes it takes a little bit of time to analyze these, but when people are rating this, they'll be looking for those specialized experiences, and you want something that resonates with those keywords. So let's go ahead with the next slide. And there's just some more and more stuff here. The knowledge, skills, and abilities, again, they kind of disappeared, but they're still back. And for example, knowledge of pertinent law, policies, regulations, precedents applicable to the program and related resources in the area being studied. Before the reform, it used to be a long essay that you would write on this. If you take a look at the bottom, just up above the 2012 Walden University, preview questions, please click here. That's the occupational questionnaire. And what will happen in some cases, it will ask you a few questions. So let's go ahead and pop to the next slide to see what that questionnaire might look like. Oh, that's the benefits thing. Actually, I think we're a little bit ahead of myself here. But benefits, we kind of look at, we'll go ahead and go to the next slide. The benefits, we look here, in some cases, it may not be any information that you need to help you apply, but sometimes I look at this because, for example, in some positions, there might be, like, they're going to look at your finances, your investments. You may have to put your investments in a blind trust. Just kind of check this section to make sure there's nothing hidden in here that may affect your application. Now let's go ahead and do the next slide. And this is a very vital part here. How to apply. Make sure you follow these instructions exactly. I mean, you know, HR offices, one of the things that they kind of talk about here is the ability to follow instructions. So if they say fax things, fax things. If they say go to a certain site and download the cover sheet that goes with your fax because they have a barcode on it, make sure you do that. What's also important here, if you get this job, make sure it's in your job book, the agency contact info, that's the person you speak to. In this case, it would be Ronnie. That if you have a question about that job, part of the application. But just kind of briefly kind of go back over it. As long as you have your achievement stories next to you when you're filling out the occupational questionnaire, you should be in good shape. Okay, so let's go ahead next to the next slide. And this is where we really start applying for the vacancy. So, Nicole, let's go ahead and after the nice smiling lady here, let's go on the next slide. Okay, there we go. Okay, now if you have a choice and you don't have the choice as much anymore with a lot of agencies, you want to try to send in a paper resume, paper cover letter, but most agencies now are going online, and I like the paper because you can control the way it looks. I'll be honest here. If you've ever printed out your online resume that's created by USA Jobs, it's not that attractive, and you have to do some stuff to make sure it formats correctly, or you can just get a big gray block of text that's just hard to read. And I've seen some really bad ones where they were really good resumes, but just the way of formatting. I mean, it's basically a text document. You can upload a Word document that looks very good of your resume and such, and hopefully they will download that too and print it out for you. But if you do it online, with a lot of the job search engines, along with USA Jobs and some of the other things that people use, or some of the agencies use a lot of spacing, use capital letters for headings, use characters to set off. I like the plus sign or the equal sign to set off parts of the resume. Just try to make it as readable as possible using, you know, the text characters. When I talk about ASCII, it's the, you know, the alphanumeric characters there, okay? One thing I like to do, this helps me out a lot, is I focus my resume, and on USA Jobs you can have up to 5 resumes at a time. When I have a resume created for a job, I make sure to target it, and I'll name it using the job number and or the job title, just so that I can refer back to it and refer back to my vacancy announcement, so that when I get the call to go interview, I can immediately know which resume I sent in and what I highlighted on that resume and how to tease into my vacancy announcement so that I'm prepared for the interview. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. Okay, on your federal resume, again, you can make it look a lot like what you would send to private industry, but again, make sure this personal information is on there. Your name, address, phone numbers, country of citizenship, social security number, veterans preference. If you don't know what the veterans preference is for you, and please if you're a veteran, make sure you use this. It's help you out. You can call the agency contact and ask them and talk to them about it. So if you're a disabled vet, you get so many points. If you're not a disabled vet, but you've been in war zones, there's a whole rating system, a whole point system, and make sure you get the points you need. Reinstatement eligibility, if you've been a federal employee before and you've been either laid off, riffed, or left for a while and can come back, there's some reinstatement eligibility that you might come under. And if you worked for the federal government before, make sure you have the highest federal grade and job series. This can help sometimes in the security investigation, kind of help, speed up the clearance process. On your objective, make sure announcement number is on there, the title, and the grade you're seeking, okay? In some jobs, you may have 3 or 4 different grades you're looking for, 7, 9, or 11. And if you don't specify, they may put you in the 7th grade, the 7th grade, and you really apply, you really actually qualify for the 11th grade. So you want to make sure that you apply for the grade that you can get and go for the highest one you can get, because it just basically means more money. Let's go ahead and next one. And keywords, keywords, keywords. I just push this so much, but this is how we rate you. This is how we know you're experienced and qualified. So when you do the summary of qualifications, I like to do a little narrative, but I like to stuff it full of the keywords that I picked out of the specialized experience and the knowledge, skills, and abilities from the vacancy announcement. Experience, of course, we've seen all this before. Education, activities, honors. Basically, if you've done your master's resume, a lot of this is just pull it over, cut and paste. On the experience part, on the duties, just stuff that full of keywords and emphasize the duties that you did that fit with that vacancy announcement. So Nicole, do we have a question?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Okay, so a common question, Bill, that we get from students is, how do you address the qualifications in the job posting in situations when maybe the exact skills, you're talking about these keywords, buzzwords, and the experience do not match exactly? So, for example, let's say in the job posting they were requiring that you know how to run an agency-specific software database. So I might have that database experience, but not the specific one that they're asking for. So how would you address that?
Okay. Well, one thing I always tell people, since in a lot of cases you're getting a security review and an investigation, don't exaggerate. Don't ever rely on a federal resume. It never works. Okay, so don't even try that. But in some cases, we'll give you a good example. In my current job, they were looking for someone that knew how to use SAS, which is a statistical analysis package. I've used SPSS, SS, and I think they still teach it at Walden, I believe, in the statistical courses. So I haven't ever used SAS, but I use SPSS, and that is very close to SAS. So when I was going through the interview, I said, oh, I've had several statistical classes. I did it in my dissertation. This is a package that I use, and from my review online, looking at SAS and looking at different things that SAS does, I'm pretty certain it was a lot like SPSS, and I could transfer, and there's that keyword, transferable skills. I could transfer the skills I had in SPSS into the SAS and pretty much get myself up to speed on it. Another example with my fiance, who goes for archives and records management positions, she often gets asked if she knows how to use a certain kind of software, and because she's worked at a lot of nonprofits which couldn't afford some of this software, she's worked at the open source versions. So when she talks to them like different database systems, yeah, I've worked with something similar to that, and I understand the basic database concepts and how that works in this in archives and records management. And I have heard about this software you're talking about, and I've heard about it at conferences and such. And I'm pretty certain I can get up to speed on that in about a week or so with some, intensive work on it. So again, do your best you can showing that you do have those transferable skills, you understand the basic concepts, and, if it's something that you can, prove an analog to that you've done before, that usually helps get you there, okay? I mean, of course, if someone comes in, and sometimes these job listings are so amazingly specific, it's crazy. I don't know how anyone qualifies for them. But if someone has that specific experience, of course they're going to get an edge up on you. But in a lot of cases, I wouldn't worry about it too much, because sometimes it's, people don't really have that specific experience because it is just a federal government software piece or position, kind of job duty.
That's great, Bill. That's very, very helpful. Okay, so now you're going to take us on, it looks like, to the occupational questionnaire.
Yes, and I apologize for that earlier about kind of a little mixed up there, but just wanted to make sure that when we talk about the good old KSAs and how they kind of went away, and they're still kind of running around in the form of the occupational questionnaire. So the good thing is you don't have to spend pages and pages writing them, but you should still know a little bit, still have those achievement stories to help you out here. So a lot of times what you'll get is a question, and this is from the version that's where you click on it and you can see a version of it. When you get onto the online, they'll have check boxes and such. But for example, you may have a question that says, from the list below, please identify all the activities which you have experience drafting, analyzing, or implementing legislation. And you could just click all these if you have that experience, or none of the above, or just any combination. Now let me give you one caveat. If you do that, make sure you reflect somewhere in your resume that you had that experience. So because what will happen is that the rater will take a look at what you checked, and then they'll go back and review your resume. And some questions may even specifically ask you, where in your resume do you show that you have this experience? And you may have to go and type in a box here the actual job that you had, when you had it, and all this, so that the rater can go back and confirm that. Okay, so that's why you want to, when you're doing the keywords and the KSA stuff, to put more into your resume, because this will help sell you on the occupational questionnaire and help kind of take place of the KSA essays. Sometimes you may have a very simple question. Have you ever had experience? Yes or no. You type in yes or no, and then a box will pop up and say, okay, when did you do this? So if we go to the next slide, I think we have an example of one of those kind of questions. If your answer to the above question was a career, job fair, any kind of thing, please identify the event. You'll talk about that event. You have a maximum length of 250 characters. Here's a good tip. Don't just type into the box. I always like to use a Word document because my spelling is not as good as I like it to be, and sometimes I like to have the grammar checker on too, just to make sure I give a good, intelligible answer without the spelling errors. Okay, just kind of a little tip if you want to do that. So realize that even though the KSA, the long essays may have gone away, there's still some of those gotchas out there in the form of the occupational questionnaire, so that's why it's good to have those achievement stories. And always, after you finish the occupational questionnaire, go back, take a look at your resume, and make sure whatever you said in your occupational questionnaire is reflected in your resume. And I always like to have a copy of my resume next to me when I fill out these things, so if I do need to, I can make notes on it, so I can always go back and check it. Okay.
Bill, this
Yes.
is Lisa. A very common question that we've gotten from our audience so far is how far back in work experience should they go? One person mentioned, should I go back 20 years? One person said, I've got 35 years of experience. So how far back should they go on these application materials?
The good rule of thumb is they say 10 years in some cases, but for example, I haven't been a paralegal for a long time, but I applied for a paralegal position a while back. And when I say a long time, it's been 15, 17 years. I went back to that experience and talked about that. So it's really kind of a judgment call. I mean, essentially, it doesn't hurt you. I mean, the USA Jobs resume, you can add as many of these experience blocks as you want. And you could focus it that way. So in your master resume, I would suggest going back to every job you had since your first professional job just to have that. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So 20 years, 35 years, I don't know. I mean, again, it depends on the position you're applying for, and if if the skills are still valid and still applicable, why not try it?
But if they're obsolete, if it's no longer relevant, then best to leave it off and just go with the rule of 10? Okay.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, because I do a lot of IT, and no one really cares about my Turbo Pascal experience.
Okay, great. Yep. Or DBase 3 Plus and things like that, right. Okay, great. Thank you.
Well, they stop me when I start talking about my Commodore 64 in interviews, so, yeah. make sure it's relevant, yes.
Okay, great, thank you.
Uh-huh. So let's see. Oh, we're back to the, we're to the cover letter, excuse me. And this is an optional, but I like to have this anyway because you can upload supporting documents. Now let me just briefly talk about what supporting documents may be. They can be transcripts. They could be professional licenses. For example, I'm a project management professional from the Project Management Institute, and I have a copy of my certificate scanned in, and I can send that up. So if I'm trying for a project management position, I have that. So you may have professional licenses and such like that. I also like to put in a cover letter just because it may or may not be read, but it doesn't hurt. And if you keep it short and to the point, like a page or so, it just kind of helps to kind of advertise you some more. So you can have a nice opener. You know, how could you help the organization? What kind of professional skills you have and such. You can help the agency. Put a bullet list of qualifications. Again, make sure they keywords, what they're looking for in a specialized experience, a short little conclusion. You know, just another piece of paper that can possibly help you here. You know, again, spend your time concentrating on the resume and such, but, you know, a cover letter can't hurt. And, you know, you never know what it might lead to in some cases. It could mean that you may not be qualified for this job, but it does look like you may be qualified for something else. And the HR office may talk to you about that. That's kind of rare, but it could happen. So let's go ahead next to the next slide. And this is for yourself. This is not, you don't want to give this to the agency. This is for yourself. Along with your master resume, you want to have a job log. And the reason is, again, because you don't know how long it's going to be until they talk to you again about the announcement. And it is, if you apply for several jobs, especially if you're trying to break into the federal government, you may apply for several jobs at once. When I was trying to get back in 2008, I applied for 25 jobs. So, you know, you want to record what you applied for. Make sure you have the job announcement number with you. Keep the copies of the announcement numbers. Any documents that you may have used for those jobs, any of the, you know, the optional documents you may put in there. And I also keep my old KSA essay questions from other jobs that I applied for, even though they're not used anymore, but you can take little brief snippets of them and put them into your resume, your targeted resume, and on the occupational questions. Just kind of, you know, it helps out a little bit there. And any notes you have on how you approach the application. It's just a good thing to keep up with so that when you do get called in for an interview, you remember what you applied for, what they were looking for, how you answered the questions so you're consistent in the interview, because they'll have your resume and any other, you know, any other documents that you may send in with it in front of them. So that way it just helps you kind of refresh your memory and keep up with it. And it also is a good way of keeping track of what you applied for and what's been working for you and what hasn't been working for you. Okay? So let's go ahead and go to networking. So this is something that you want to do while you're working on looking for job vacancies, because again, all the online sources are kind of passive. With the networking, this is where you kind of get out there, and it also helps you in, well, we'll go ahead and jump to the next slide because they have all these points there. Helps you find out about openings. That's one of the best ways you can, and kind of find out about openings before they get posted in some cases. Helps you learn about the agency's culture. Sometimes you may talk to someone, you may be interested in going for this agency, you talk to a few folks that work there, and you may not really want to work there. You may want to find another office that might be better for you. You can also find out about fellowships this way, or contractor jobs. In some cases, you may not be able to get into the agency right away as a Fed, but you might find a contracting firm that they're doing a contract with, a temporary, get you into the agency, kind of get you seen, let you learn about the culture and such, and, you know, it's often very possible. I mean, I've seen a lot of times where a contractor actually is invited to come on and hired on at an agency. So in preparing for your networking, again, just like you're preparing for answering those applications, talk about your personal brand. And nowadays we look at all the social networking sites, so LinkedIn, Facebook, you know, your own personal website. Have some networking cards because there's all kinds of events going on, job fairs and such, and this is just a good way to get out there and get known, and have a good contact management system. If you're like me and your memory's not all that great for names and faces, you might want to have a good system there just so that you can, after you leave an event, type down who you met, get their cards in there so that the next time you email them or phone them, you know who you're talking to. You don't embarrass yourself. Okay, so go ahead, next slide. So networking your way to a federal job, one of the big things I like to push is LinkedIn. It's free. I mean, there is a paid service of it, but you know, it's free. There's a lot of good networking groups on there. And go ahead and build your free profile. And I use it in my email signature and forum postings. I also use it when I'm applying for federal jobs. Sometimes I will mention my LinkedIn profile in my series of qualifications or just kind of point out some things that I've done. And again, you just put the link on there, mention you have a LinkedIn profile. It's not an official part of your application, but there's nothing to prevent the person from clicking on it and looking at it further if they want some more information about some other things. And they may not apply to that job, but kind of rounds you out as a person. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide, excuse me. This is GovLoop. It's kind of a Facebook for government employees. I've been on this for a long time. It's now past 50,000 members. I think it's close to 75. But essentially, this is where a lot of federal workers get on there, state and local workers get on there, contractors. They have just launched something called jobs.govloop.com, where they go through the USA Jobs, kind of pick out the top 10 jobs for that week in various categories. There's all kinds of different communities. A great way to network. There's all kinds of interest groups on there, agency groups and that. So just a good way to kind of find out what's going on in the federal government, learn the culture, find out about new jobs, and network with current employees, past employees, and contractors. Okay, we'll go ahead and next slide. And back again to LinkedIn, the U.S. Government Connections. Also see a lot of these for the state and local. And again, I like LinkedIn a lot because it is a professional, site, and it gives you a good way to get your professional version, professional face out there. And I believe Walden's got a very big, presence on there. So I'm on several different Walden groups. And, as one thing about Walden is, the alumni network is amazing. Just keeping up with your fellow students that you've been with. That's the way I find out a lot of, contacts, and I find out about a lot of job openings and such. So currently helping a guy right now that I met through one of the LinkedIn groups that works in the same area with me, and helping him with his dissertation at the moment. And he's helping me trying to get my fiance into NARA, National Association, or National Archives and Records Administration. So, great way of finding great connections on there. You never know who you run into. Networking, let's see here, Facebook. Some agencies use it. I use it myself. I use it almost daily, but it's more kind of like my friends and such. Just when you use Facebook, do realize that they look at that too during the security clearances, so you might want to make sure you got good information on there and sanitize some of your information. Twitter, not as much networking, but more like finding out about agency job openings and alerts. There's a lot of good Twitter groups out there, state and local, and the federal, of course. And it's more kind of like a news alert service. And, again, use these, build your network, family and friends, always go to them first. Walden classmates have been always very helpful. The agency HR contacts, again, if there's an agency you're interested in, like a Veterans Administration, get to know the HR folks, get to talk to them, and, don't call them all the time like you would your family and friends, but get to know them, talk to them occasionally, see what's going on out there. I'm a big believer in professional associations. A lot of stuff that's helped me with, it's been with the Project Management Institute, the Business Analyst Association, and the American Society for Public Administration. I know in my program that, public policy folks, that we get automatic membership in it as a student. And I'm not sure about the other programs, if you get membership in some of the professional associations, but please use that. I mean, that does help you. That does alert you to what kind of job openings are out there. And let's see here. And I think we're down to questions now. So that's my basic networking message there, is just get out there, talk to a lot of folks, collect names, collect cards and such, and make sure you keep them. That's your best news network out there, essentially.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Bill. So we're going to go on. We are receiving many, many questions, so glad to see our audience is so engaged. One question would be, and this is regarding networking, since we just got through talking about that, what's the best way to integrate into some of these online social networking groups, especially like U.S. Government Connections, if one is joining the group maybe from the outside of the federal government? So what's a good way to ease into and approach these networking environments?
Okay. I can tell you one way that you don't want to do it, because I see this a lot, and it kind of makes you cringe. But you have some people that come in, and I know they're desperate for a job, or they really want to get in there, and they kind of jump in and say, I'm a student and I'm looking for a job. Can you help me? And it's not like people don't want to help you, but you got to kind of give them a little bit more than that to work with. And in some cases there, it's like, any kind of social group, you want to lurk around a little bit, get to know the place, because you may start asking this question at this group, and it may not be the right group to talk to about this. So lurk and learn the culture of the group, and learn about what people are interested in and talking about, and then kind of gently ease yourself in the conversation. And the best way to ease yourself in, and this is where it's great to be a Walden student. I mean, again, we see a lot of master's and doctoral students here. You have dissertations you're writing, you have papers you're writing, you have master's thesis that you're writing. You know, you've got some great information, current information out there, and using ourselves as scholar practitioners, I see a lot of times someone gets on these groups and they're saying, you know, I have this thing going at the agency. We're trying to figure out how to do a culture change, or we're trying to figure out how to do some kind of training. And this may be something you're working on right now. And you can say, hey, well, you know, I'm working on a master's thesis on this, and this is what I found in the, you know, in the academic literature that could answer your question, and kind of summarize maybe a couple of research papers or something, and kind of throw it out there. You know, you're seen as a resource, you're helping someone, and maybe kind of put into your signature line, you know, that you're looking for a job, but kind of low-key, and you're kind of giving out help first before you're asking for help. And that makes you look more like a valuable resource in the community there, and a contributing community member. I mean, for example, when I was working on my dissertation, which was on organizational change, you know, I would be on some of the LinkedIn groups, and some people would ask about that, and I could say, oh, well, if you're looking at vision, you know, how to create an organizational vision, I have a few papers on that I could send to you, and this is some interesting stuff that they're doing on that.
That's
Bill?
excellent. Yeah, go ahead, Lisa.
Bill, I have a question from a student who's looking to change careers and just lacks the on-point experience. And she's saying she's finding it difficult to translate what she's currently doing into what she wants to achieve. So how do you suggest she best use her job experience if it's unrelated to the position? Does she pull from her, for example, customer service and management experience of her current job, or should she stress her educational experiences more if they're more closely related to the position she's applying for?
Yeah, I mean, again, yeah, and it's a great question, because we're talking again about transferable skills and just how well can your skills transfer. I mean, there are a universal set of skills. If she's a good writer, a good communicator, those are skills that every job needs. If she's good at analysis, quantitative, qualitative, that's another thing she can pull. Some of the customer service skills, I mean, those can be kind of redone or, you know, repackaged to show that, you know, I'm good at negotiation, I'm good at leading a team, you know, basically another set of good communication skills. But, you know, when we do the analysis and do the keyword analysis, and it looks like your education is closer fit, yeah, emphasize that and talk about, you know, I have this background here in this, and I'm a customer service person. Let's say she wants to go into IT, and she's just learning about the IT systems and such, and say, well, you know, I'm learning the technology. My education will help me fill in for that, but my background as a customer service person helps me learn what users want, and how to communicate with people that are going to be using the software packages, and how to understand what the requirements are so that I can program a better system for them. Okay? Great. Or, for example, yeah, okay. I can go on for a long time.
Okay, okay. Terrific. And so volunteer experience, that should be included on there as well. That was another question. Okay.
I'm amazed at people who downgrade their volunteer experience, and it's just tremendous what they do. I mean, one lady, she organizes this large extended family reunion, and she has 300 people come into town for a week, and she's organizing hotels and logistics. I'm like, my goodness, you know, this is what event planners do and charge large amounts of money to do, and you do it, you know, look at the details, look at the logistics. It's amazing. You know, great example of project management.
That's excellent. That helps people understand their transferable skills.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question here from someone who's been self-employed for 15 years.
Yeah.
I am my own supervisor, and I've been self-employed for 15 years. So how is this handled?
Okay. Well, that's a good question, because I'm actually, when we were talking to some of the paralegals, a lot of them, when I was on the rating panel, were self-employed. They freelanced themselves out. So, I mean, one of the questions is, can you tell us what your supervisor, can we contact your supervisor? Well, yeah, you're talking to them now. Again, show that you have the, you know, the professional skills. And in some cases, you may not have a job evaluation because I doubt anyone self-employed evaluates themselves. But you do have things that you can use to showcase, okay? Like a portfolio. You've got client testimonials. You've got other people that you've worked with that you can, solicit their endorsement from. I mean, one person, there was an interesting resume, put on there quotes from clients they worked with. And on Facebook, you can also have people recommend you, and they included some of that on their resume. So there is a way that if you don't have an immediate supervisor, if you're self-employed, you actually do have people that evaluate you, and that's your clients. And one telling way is how well has your business grown? I mean, if this person has been self-employed for 15 years and their business keeps growing, they must be doing something right because they're making their customers happy, and that does translate to good evaluations.
That's great.
Great. We've gotten a couple questions with regards to veterans preference, and it seems like individuals have been applying for positions. They're finding that that veterans have a preference or there are internal candidates that end up being hired. And any suggestions that you might have for being more successful in applying for certain types of positions or certain parts of the country where that might not be as big a challenge in the application process? Bill, are you there? Are you there? Hello?
Hello, Bill?
Are you there? Did we lose you?
I think we might have lost him. Shoot.
Okay. Well, there was another question on the best place to apply for federal jobs. Just because most of them are located in Washington, D.C., I would suggest that that would be the best place because that's the seat of the federal government. So I thought I could just go ahead and answer that. I think the question we were posing with regards to the veterans preference would have been a pretty tough one for him to handle. One person mentioned there in the Norfolk, Virginia area where there are a lot of veterans that are applying and military dependents, and that's just going to be a really tough thing to overcome because there is that preference. So, and I'm just trying to see if there are other questions on here that we might be able to field while Bill is.
Sure. It looks like his phone call got disconnected, so we'll just wait. We can field some questions while he's trying to connect back in.
Okay, I've been tracking them pretty well throughout the webinar, and
okay,
so
great.
Common questions that we're getting have to do with why am I putting salary information on here and social security number and security clearance and things that they're asking for that I'm not used to putting on a private resume. The federal government has different qualifications that they look at with regards to hiring folks. And so if they're asking for salary information, one person said, I have, a salary from the private sector, and how's that going to translate into the government? They just want to see if their position is in the ballpark of what you're making. Because the presumption would be if it's a drastic salary cut from what you're making, perhaps outside the federal government, that might be a position that you might not want. So, because most people don't want to take a pay cut. So that's really what they're looking at. They're looking at, is the salary comparable? Okay, and it can also relate to your experience as well. Okay. Bill, are you back on by any chance?
Yes.
Oh, great.
I apologize for that. They were doing some digging on our street, and I was worried the electricity would go out, but actually the telephone just went out, so I'm off my landline.
Okay. Well, I was just trying to answer a question for you, and maybe you can confirm whether I was right in the way I answered it. The question related to the fact that candidates are being asked for salary and Social Security information and security clearance and a lot of other things that they would not put on a resume normally. You know, that
Right.
seems kind of privacy information, such as especially salary and Social Security number. And the question is, do we have to make sure that that's on there, and why are we being asked for that information?
In some cases, if you're going for a top secret classification, they need a Social Security number to check that. The best way to do is contact your agency, the HR person, and tell them of your concerns, and they're supposed to work with you on that so that you can say, I'll give you that information, but can I give that to you in a separate document or in some way that I'm certain that it won't be widely distributed.
Okay. And the information that's being collected regarding salary, could you speak to that as to why they're asking for that in advance of, one entering the process?
again, with it's kind of a complex question, and it works in the office I work in, actually, a pay system. Part of it is just kind of to help the government understand what are fair wages for the job that we're hiring people for. So that kind of helps build a statistical database. And second is just kind of, when you look at the job positions here, it's just to kind of help people realize that, you're not going to be paid as much as you would maybe in the private sector for some jobs. And it's just, it's one of the things that the government collects to try to make sure that they do find a good fit for you. Okay?
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Terrific.
Yeah. I mean, it is common complaint sometimes. Folks say, wow, the government asks you for a lot more information I want to give to you. But, some of the jobs you work are very sensitive, and they just want to make sure, and that security classification or security investigation, that's just some of the stuff they ask. They want to verify.
Okay.
Yeah.
Could it make the process more challenging if one made a lot more money in the private sector than the position was paying in the government? Would the government kind of assume, well, the person's probably not going to be interested in this position if they, because it's such a cut? I mean, is that a concern?
No, not as much as just to make sure that they can verify what you state that you made versus what what your Social Security or tax income information says and all that.
Okay, got it. Great. Okay, and that relates to another question. We talked about Social Security number. The question is one of citizenship. Do folks with green cards, can they apply for federal employment, or do you need the U.S. citizenship?
I mean, no. Actually, my boss is was a British citizen when he applied, and he's now American. He went through the naturalization process. No, I mean, again, if you've got a green card, and they'll of course investigate that. But if you got a green card, you should be able to apply. I mean, for specific jobs, ask the HR folks. But no, foreign. I've worked with a lot of folks that have come from other countries.
Great. Okay. Another question here, what if one has taken courses at a particular institution but not gotten a degree? Should we list even just a few courses that we've taken at a college or university?
Oh, yeah. I mean, yes, go ahead and do that, and, always make sure the courses are kind of relevant to what you're looking for, too. But, yeah, if you're applying for a position, in some cases, one of the questions may be you may have a mix of education and experience. So you may have some experience in this position, but you've also taken some courses. You didn't get a degree, but you've taken some courses towards that, and that does count. So you can answer that one question about I have a mix of experience and education. I mean, don't rule out anything. Go ahead and give it your best on there.
Okay, terrific. And another question which related to the question I was posing when we got disconnected. I've been applying for federal jobs for over 4 years. I routinely get correspondence that says they've selected veteran candidates or internal applicants. Are there federal jobs in which these two classifications are not given preference?
I mean, right now, with the Obama administration, there is a push to hire veterans for pretty much almost all the positions and such. And I mean, that's just, policy right now. I don't really know of any job out there that doesn't have, that doesn't have a veteran preference on it. Again, and with the entry level, there's, you can try to go for the mid-level stuff that maybe give you that kind of experience and education. But right now, that's just, the fact right there that veterans are going to get a preference at the time. The only field I know where it doesn't seem to matter as much as the IT, okay? Because that's kind of specialized, and even if you have a veteran's preference, that seems to be kind of washed out when you're going for the IT because they're looking for more of the background experience in a specific system. But I understand, the 4 years. I know some folks have tried for a few years to get in, and just keep working at it, just persevere.
Great. Okay.
Maybe one route, just thinking about this, is looking at contractors that might work for those agencies or in that kind of related field. Get in that way.
Well, that relates to another question we got. Where are the contractor positions typically advertised? Those are not located on USA Jobs. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
And No, okay, and that's, you know, and it's kind of a disparate sources again. Some of the newspapers I talk about, Washington Post. Look at your professional association. For example, with my fiance, with the archivists and records managers, there's a lot of contractors that are part of that association that you can talk to, and look through the membership directory. And in a lot of cases, what you can do is talk to the agency, you know, maybe the HR folks or the contracting office, that they'll tell you this, and see who they contract with. Some of these places I found by just going on to Google and looking for contractors in a certain field in the area I'm looking for, like in D.C., and they have a lot of listings there. But this is, again, where the networking really helps.
Great. Okay. Let's see. And we had a couple questions from folks with disabled veteran status, and if let's see, I'm going to just go back to the question. Pardon me for just a minute. Let's see. Okay, so one of our students is a disabled veteran and was saying that he's finding in the process that most of the positions have been filled internally, and they're wondering why the position's posted sometimes, if that seems to be the case, if there's an internal candidate.
You know, again, that's up to each agency and how they want to handle that. And, you know, there is a preference for internal candidates on this, but they do want to open up the process in case they just don't have someone that's qualified internally. And I understand it can be frustrating, believe me. You know, when I was looking for some job, I was perfect for them, I thought, and then an internal candidate took it. It's happened to my fiance. So, you know, again, in some agencies, yeah, they have to open up the job not only, you know, by law, not only to internal candidates, but also to external. So they will have a kind of advantage there. That's the truth on that.
And we're going to close out things with a very easy question. Bill, how long did it take you from start to finish, from starting to apply for federal positions to getting hired?
Oh, okay. Let's see. Well, when I started this process in 2008, and, you know, not all experiences are typical, but this is kind of worked with me. I started looking in earnest in March of 2008 and started applying. I got a phone call for the interview around June of that year, and actually got offered a position in October. And for a lot of my friends, that was considered lightning speed. So,
okay, all right. So 7 months was lightning speed. Okay, all right.
Yeah,
terrific.
I would suggest about 6 months to a year on the process. It's getting better. It is getting better, but you know, there's still a process there you have to go through. And a lot of reasons why is it so slow? You just have to make sure that, you know, they have to be fair to everyone. They have to make sure that, you know, things are done in a methodical way. Okay. And, you know, it just in an accountable way. So that's why there's some more time with it. But again, you know, when I went to the Veterans Job Fair, they had some agencies that were authorized to hire people on the spot, and they were hired there, and, you know, on that day. So it could happen.
Great. Okay. Terrific. Well, I'm going to hand it off to Nicole to close out the webinar. Thank you, Bill, for answering those questions, and thank you to our participants for posing some excellent questions.
Absolutely. Again, Bill, we want to thank you for this very engaging webinar and all of our audience and their engaging questions. It's been great. So for our audience out there, please feel free. We encourage all of our Walden students and alum to connect with the Walden Career Services Center using some of our resources from our website that are on this slide. You can schedule an appointment. We have a blog where we highlight student success stories. Today's webinar, including many other webinars, we have recorded and they're archived, so you can view them, this webinar, within the next few weeks. It'll be archived on our website, and you'll be able to view it at any time at your convenience, along with a PDF of the PowerPoint that you can go through and take your time. We also encourage you to join our Walden University Career Services LinkedIn group. And we're nearing 160 members just within a few months, so it is growing rapidly. Bill is one of the first ones to join. We can also interact with people, face to face, but you also want to make sure, as we mentioned throughout the webinar today, using LinkedIn and online networking, because really we do want to grow our professional presence and reputation online. So we do highly suggest that you join our Career Services, Walden University Career Services LinkedIn group. And finally, we do want to thank everyone for participating, and especially our presenter today, Bill, for taking his time to share all of his insights in the federal job search. And we'll close that. Please stay posted with our Career Center website under latest news to view our upcoming webinars. We will be offering a topic, at least once a month, and feel free to view the archives. And with that, we'll close it up, and thank everyone for joining us today.